Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to Becoming Cleo. I am so excited that you're here and I'm so excited to be back with another video. Today I'm going to be talking about my journey to getting diagnosed with hypothyroidism. I'm going to be sharing the different things that I've done to help manage and treat my symptoms, the different lifestyle changes and different diet changes that I've had to make. So before we get started, I want to put out a disclaimer. I am not a doctor. I am not a medical professional. I'm not a specialist. I am simply just sharing the different things that I do and what works for me. But always, always, always do your own research, consult with your doctors, and seek help from an actual medical professional. So now that we've got that out the way, let's get right into it. Hypothyroidism is also known as underactive thyroid, and it's when your thyroid gland does not produce enough of the actual thyroid hormones on its own to meet your body's needs. And your thyroid hormones, they control a lot in your body. Just to name a few, your thyroid hormones, they control your body temperature, your metabolism, and your digestive function. They actually play a huge role throughout the entire body, but those are just to name a few things. Leave a few links below if you want to do research and learn more about hypothyroidism. Now I'm going to be talking about my story and my journey as to how I got diagnosed with hypothyroidism. This was July 2019, and I remember me and my family were about to go to Mexico for a family vacation. But the whole week leading up to the vacation, I just remember feeling off. I felt like something was wrong, but I really didn't know what to expect, and I thought that honestly it would just go away over time. But 2 days before we were about to leave, I was just like, something's wrong. I have to go to the emergency room and figure this out. But the very first symptom that I had was fatigue. I remember feeling so fatigued that it was just hard to do simple tasks. It was hard to get up out of the bed and walk to the bathroom without feeling exhausted, like I had to run a marathon. It was hard to walk down the steps, and it was even hard for me to pack for Mexico. I was so fatigued that I could not fold my clothes, couldn't pack for Mexico. I was just feeling like I just can't do this thing because I feel so tired. I also felt muscle weakness, extreme sensitivity to cold. Like I said, this was July, this was summertime. This is the time where it's hot outside and you have the air on. But I remember feeling so cold that it was hard for me to even move from outside of the blanket because of how cold I was. I also was experiencing constipation, bloating, indigestion, and brain fog. I just felt like this fogginess, like this haze in my head that I just could not get out of. But for me, the most alarming thing was the fatigue. I had never experienced fatigue that bad before. So the day before we were about to go to Mexico, I decided to go to the emergency room and figure out what was going on. So I went to the emergency room, they ran some tests, and of course they sent me home because you're not going to get your tests back the same day. I was really determined to go to Mexico because I had never been out the country. So I was like, you know what? We're going to pull it together and we're going to go. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to Mexico anyway, and just things are going to get better. I'll get the results when I get them. Trip's already paid for, but I'm not staying home. So I end up being able to fly the next day, going to Mexico, and feeling fine. Like, some of the symptoms were still there. I still felt like the fatigue, but it had gotten a lot better the next day as I was going to Mexico. So I flew there with no problem. And then I think 2 days into being in Mexico, I remember the fatigue just rushing back all at once. Me and my family were at the beach, and from us walking to the beach back to the elevator to get into the hotel, it was probably like a 3-minute walk. But I just remember feeling so fatigued. I also felt this extreme sensitivity to the heat. I felt like it was excessive heat. I was burning up, I was hot, and I really just couldn't tolerate the temperature that was outside. So once we got back into the hotel room, I kind of just started freaking out. Internally, I was like, something's wrong, something's not right. I don't really know what's going on. So I ended up panicking and having a panic attack because I just don't know what's happening. And so my family, they called the hotel doctor. They check on me. The doctor's like, you're fine, your heart's not racing. But you know, if you've had panic attacks before that, it feels like your heart is literally about to jump out of your chest. So the doctor's telling me that I'm fine, that there's nothing wrong. And I'm over here like, well, there's something wrong. And so I end up going to the ER in Mexico. Doctor there ends up treating me, and I finally get my test results back from my insurance. And I find out that I have an elevated thyroid level, where the point, it's not super high, but it's high enough to be outside of the standard of normal. While I'm in the hospital, or while I'm in the ER in Mexico, I'm explaining to this doctor, this is what I've been feeling this entire week. these are the symptoms that I've had. And we were brought to the conclusion that it was hypothyroidism. The doctor ended up giving me medicine. I ended up taking that over the next few days until I was able to go back home to see my primary care doctor. Once I go home and see my primary care doctor, she checks my levels again. Like I said before, it's not super high, but it's still not within the normal. And so she gives me the medicine. I'm prescribed levothyroxine for hypothyroidism, and I start taking that, and I've been taking that since 2019. Now, there's a lot more that happened to this story. There's a lot more to me getting treatment and really getting a true and actual diagnosis of hypothyroidism. But for the sake of this video, I am not going to go into extreme detail because it is a very long story. But essentially, that is how I got diagnosed with hypothyroidism. Ever since then, I have been taking the medicine. So since July 2019 to now, I have been diagnosed with hypothyroidism and I have been taking the medicine that is levothyroxine. Now, since getting diagnosed with hypothyroidism in July 2019 to now, I've seen a lot of doctors, I've seen a holistic practitioner, I've done my own research, I've subscribed to Instagram pages learning more about hypothyroidism, and I've been learning how to manage my hormones, and I've been learning about the different lifestyle and the different diet and just overall changes that I can do to help improve my health. So overall, with hypothyroidism and with being medicated every day on levothyroxine, I still experience some symptoms, but not nearly as what I did before. The symptoms that I experience on the day-to-day, cold hands and feet. My hands and feet are literally always cold, even if it's hot outside. They're just cold. I also experience brain fog and trouble concentrating. Bloating I don't experience in my day-to-day life, but it is something that comes up every now and again. And one of the biggest things that I experience with still having hypothyroidism and being treated is forgetfulness. I forget a lot of things, especially if I don't write it down. But those are more of like my day-to-day symptoms. So like the muscle weakness, the fatigue, the feeling cold all over my body, or just completely intolerant to cold and heat is not something that I experienced since taking medication and since taking levothyroxine. I've done a lot of work working with people and then work on my own to just really get an understanding of hypothyroidism, how to control these symptoms, and how to manage them. So now I'm going to be sharing the different things that I do to help me manage my symptoms and really just to live a overall more holistic and healthier life. So one of the things that I started doing was being sure that I'm mindful about my stress levels and how I've been managing stress. Of course, stress is not good for anybody. Specifically, if you have hypothyroidism and you've been experiencing a great amount of stress, that's an opportunity for your symptoms to flare up and for you to have more present symptoms. Managing stress and just being mindful of your stress levels and your cortisol levels, and the cortisol is the stress hormone in your body. Just being mindful of those things is really going to help to make sure that you keep your symptoms at bay. So a few things that I do to help manage my stress and cortisol level. One of the things that I personally love, that I swear by, and if you watched any of my other videos, you would know this, I like to journal. Journaling is a stress relief for me. It's how I best process my information. It's how I get my thoughts out, how I can like let it all go and release it onto the page. So I highly recommend journaling. And if you're not like a journaler, there's always like those audio, those visual diaries that you can do too, but really just finding out what is a good stress release for you. Something else that I do to help manage my stress levels is I stretch. I try and stretch every single day because I found that stretching can be extremely relaxing. It can get the tension and all the kinks and aches out of your body. And it can really just help you feel like refreshed and rejuvenated after you finish a really good stretching session. There's someone that I love on YouTube whose videos I watch for stretching. Her name and her channel, I can't remember right now, but I'll also link that in the description if you're trying to get some stretching on to help relieve some stress from your body. And another thing that I do to manage stress is I like to meditate, whether that's meditating with, if it's guided, or whether that's just me putting on meditation music and really just getting in the zone, getting in the moment. Meditation really helps, for me at least, to clear my head and to just feel really good, or to just completely not think about anything at all and just allow myself to have that moment of nothingness. So that looks different for everybody, but that's something that I do to help manage my stress. Now, there are also supplements and things that I take when it comes to stress management. And I'll link this below if you are interested in purchasing it. But this is the ashwagandha that I take, and I've been using this brand since I think May of last year. Ashwagandha has some really amazing benefits. It can help reduce anxiety. It helps with controlling and lowering your cortisol level in your body, increasing your energy. It supports your thyroid function, and it can help with your memory and just being focused. So earlier I talked about having trouble concentrating and brain fog. Ashwagandha will really help get all of that under control. So this is ashwagandha in the Gia brand. Like I said, I will link it below. The other two things that I do for stress management and lowering my cortisol level is I'm a tea girl. I love tea, and I drink tea really almost every day. But when I'm really needing some extra support when it comes to relaxing and when it comes to stress, I will turn to my loose leaf herbs. So for me, I use chamomile tea, which as you can see, I'm literally almost out of this because this is how much I drink tea. And then I also use lavender tea as well. Both of these are really good herbs for reducing stress, reducing anxiety, and just feeling relaxed. There are other teas that have these benefits as well, but for me, lavender and chamomile have been my go-to. The next change that I made was in how I move my body and the way in which I move my body. So sometimes, especially when you have hypothyroidism, having really high intensity workouts can stress your body and it can raise your cortisol levels. So I started prioritizing workouts that are going to be low stress and low impact for me. So one of those workouts is walking. I have a dog, so it's super easy to just walk outside with my dog, take him out on his morning walk, bathroom break. That really helps me to actually get outside and do my steps. But you can also walk at the gym, walk in your neighborhood, walk in your house, whatever works for you. I think walking is one of those exercises that is highly underrated because it can help lower your stress levels. It can help with clearing your mind and just overall feeling better, and it improves your health. I try to walk at least 1 mile a day depending on how I'm feeling. But if I'm really getting into the groove of things and I'm walking a lot, I will try to hit 8,000 to 10,000 steps for no specific reason other than the fact that that is my goal. And I just want to make sure that I'm walking as much as possible to reduce stress and to improve my health. And second thing that I do is weight training, weightlifting, resistance training, whatever you want to call it. But I lift weights. And I lift weights very slowly. I'm not trying to get so many reps in so fast, but I do very slow and weighted low impact workouts. And I find that these help me preserve my energy best. I don't feel exhausted or tired after. And I feel like I've seen physical improvements in me doing weightlifting, I would say for the past year and a half on and off. So I like weight training. It's my preferred exercise method, just because I feel like I'm actually seeing results from it and I feel good after weightlifting. The very last thing that I've started doing recently is cycle syncing and just being aware as to my energy levels as it relates to the different phase that my body is in when it comes to having my cycle. So I don't work out on my cycle because I try to preserve my energy because I don't want to stress myself out by doing workouts when I really don't have it in me. And I also try to work out during the times where my body has the most energy. Again, I recently just started doing this, so I'm not going to go too into it, but cycle syncing is something to look into if you're interested in using the natural flow of your body and your energy to work out while you're on your cycle. Also made a few diet changes when it comes to hypothyroidism. So a lot of times in the hypothyroidism community, a lot of people will recommend cutting out dairy and cutting out gluten. I'll just want to say that you should just do what's best for you, listen to your body, and then move accordingly. But for me, prior to getting diagnosed with hypothyroidism, I did not eat dairy. So that's not something that changed once I got diagnosed. I still don't eat dairy and I'm pescatarian. So that's just kind of like, that really just stayed the same. But the one thing that I did, or the two things that I did change when it comes to my diet and having hypothyroidism, the first thing is I stopped eating gluten. And I know I said that's like a big thing in the hypo community, is that people say you have to stop eating gluten. But I personally stopped eating gluten because I found that eating gluten, especially if it's like a lot of gluten, like bread or like patties or like sandwiches, eating bread for me did not digest well, literally. Eating bread for me would have me really bloated and constipated for at least 2 days before I'm able to process it. So I personally do not break down gluten that well within my body. And I just found that eating it, especially when it's like in a bread form, it's just something that I can't do often. Now, I'm not saying that I don't eat any gluten at all whatsoever, because I love bread and I love garlic bread and I just can't resist me some really good garlic bread. But I do try my very best to stay away from gluten as much as possible. So I'll do a lot of different gluten-free alternatives. I'll do gluten-free bread, gluten-free pasta, and I've tried gluten-free garlic bread if you're wondering about that. That wasn't good. So I just try to make sure that I eat as much gluten-free as possible. I will say I'm about 80% gluten-free, and then 20% of the time I'm eating gluten. And I find for me that that's manageable. And the second thing that I've done when it comes to changing my diet is I prioritize protein a lot more. So for me, I always try to make sure that I have a high protein breakfast, protein with my lunch, protein with my dinner, my snack, whatever it is that I can have protein with, I always try to get it in. I do know that eating proteins or high proteins can help in supporting your thyroid function. And one of the symptoms that people may have when having hypothyroidism is weight gain. So eating high protein, lower carb can really also help you to lose weight if that's something that is your goal. I'll tell you guys what I do for breakfast just to give you an example. So like I said, I always try to have a high protein meal for breakfast just to help balance my blood sugar, help me feel fuller longer, and then just to make sure I get my protein intake in. So I've been using the Aura So Lean and So Clean plant-based protein with superfood. This has 3 sugars in it and then 21 grams of protein in it. This is what it looks like here. You can't really see it that good. This is linked in my Amazon storefront, so I'll leave a link for that below. But this is the protein that I use in the mornings, and I'll just prepare it differently. Sometimes I'll put it in a berry smoothie. Other times I'll mix protein and yogurt together, or I may just have some protein and yogurt. Whatever that looks like, I just really try to make sure that I get my protein in. And one of the very big changes that I made within my lifestyle is trying to use more natural, chemical-free or non-toxic everyday products in my household as much as possible. So hypothyroidism is an endocrine disorder because of the lack of thyroid hormone that your body can produce, and certain products with chemicals or toxins in them can act as endocrine disruptors that essentially throw your hormones out of whack. So since we're dealing with our thyroid hormone here and me getting a synthetic hormone, when it comes to taking levothyroxine, I really try to use products that are least toxic as possible, especially when it comes to my everyday products. Some of the products that I've swapped out to use a more natural or healthier or less toxic version of, the very first thing is deodorant. I used to use Degree deodorant, which has the aluminum in it, and then other types of chemicals as well. So now I've switched to a more natural version. I'm using raw sugar deodorant since November of last year. I really love raw sugar deodorant when it comes to using natural deodorant, at least in my experience. Even though it doesn't have any antiperspirant in it and it's not going to stop you from sweating, I still found that at least with using raw sugar deodorant that it allows me to stay fresh throughout the day. I don't have to reapply it. I also don't sweat a ton with using raw sugar deodorant. So that's the deodorant that I switched to that I liked. Before then I was using native deodorant, which doesn't really work well for me anymore, but it works well for my sister. So with natural deodorant, if you're interested in switching it to a more natural version, those are 2 you can try, but you really just have to find the deodorant that works best for you because everybody is different. When it comes to using body soap, since we have to shower and wash our body every single day, I switched to a more natural soap. And the soap that I'm using now doesn't have any parabens in it. It doesn't have any sulfates in it, any silicons or anything like that. It's pretty natural. I started using Shea Moisture's body soap with shea butter, frankincense, and myrrh. Even though it's a natural soap, it has really good lather and it smells really good, and it also keeps me smelling really good. And I'll link that below in the description if you're interested in checking that out. I'm also very mindful of the products that I apply to my skin and to my face on a daily basis. So before using all the products that I have now with my current skincare routine, I try to make sure these products have as little bit of chemical as possible, or that these products are at least more on the natural and healthier side. A whole video of the products that I use on my skin, I will link that above so you guys can check that out. Make sure to look up and research the products that I use to make sure that they're more natural and more on the cleaner ingredient side. If you want to check out your product and see what you're using on your skin and on your body and in your household and everyday life, I recommend the Think Dirty app. It's actually one of the apps that I first started using when I was checking out how clean my product was. This is the Think Dirty app. I'll link it below. You can actually put in the product that you're using and it'll tell you if the ingredients are clean, if they're dirty, in the middle, and it'll give it a score so you can kind of know like where that product stands when it comes to using it with your everyday life. So all of my products score really high on the clean ingredients side based on the Think Dirty app. And that's a huge part of the reason why I decided to go with those products. Not just because they work for my skin type, but also because they have clean ingredients. And if you really want to make sure that your products are clean, I made my own DIY serum. That way I know exactly what's going in the product, where it's sourced from, and that's something that I use on my face every single day. So you can also make your own products if you don't want to go out and research and try to find the products that are best for you. Again, I specifically changed up things in my day-to-day that I use and not really things that I use overall. Another one is that I make sure all of my hair products are silicone-free, sulfate-free, paraben-free, just because I want to make sure what I'm applying to my hair, even if it's not on a daily basis, but since it's a part of my scalp and that it's going on my skin, I want to make sure that that's going to be a product that's clean as well. And then some other things that I've swapped out as well, just to give you guys an idea. I use a cast iron skillet instead of a non-stick. I switched to a more natural laundry detergent and a more natural cleaning ingredients as well. So of course, do your own research, check out the Think Dirty app, and just really make sure you look at how clean the product is before using it, because like I said, when you have hypothyroidism as an endocrine disorder, you want to make sure that you're disrupting your hormones as little as possible in any way that you can and in any way that you have control of. Of course, we can't get to every single thing in our everyday life, but we can try to do our part and use products that are more clean, more natural, less toxic, and better ingredient products. So those are the different things that I have done to manage my hypothyroidism and to manage the symptoms. These are the things that work for me and the lifestyle changes and diet changes that I've made. Again, this is what works for me. I'm not a doctor, so always consult your doctor, do your own research, and figure out what works best for you. But I hope you liked this video, and I hope that it was helpful to you, especially if you have hypothyroidism. Please feel free to leave your questions and comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.